I used to be a fairly clever guy. I have a PhD from MIT, I've been a scientist, a corporate manager, and a consultant. But that's all ancient history. Now, it takes me 2 or 3 trips up and down the stairs every morning just to get dressed and ready for breakfast. If you add in difficulty finding cereal bowls that have been on the same shelf in the same cabinet since 1972, and forgetting to warm up the coffee, that's 4 or 5 blunders before I'm even ready to face the day. Alzheimer's disease has been part of my life for more than 30 years. I'm the 4th member of my extended family to be officially diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. My mother had it, one of her brothers had it, one of his sons, formerly a partner in a prestigious Boston law firm, has it now. A few years ago, I started to lose my car. Did I park in the lot behind the shoe store or in the lot near the bank? I didn't think much about it, but my younger daughter put it in perspective. The 3rd or 4th time that I told her that I was going to a gym that was run by 2 brothers who had attended Lexington High School at roughly the same time that she and her sister did, she responded by asking me, "Did you know that you have cousins in New York?" This was a quotation of the question that my mother had asked her every time they met for several years after my daughter decided to attend college at Columbia University. I was shocked, but I recognized the truth in what she was saying. I asked the clinical psychologist I know whether she knew a physician who specialized in Alzheimer's disease. She asked a colleague in Cambridge, who listed a few specialists, including one at the Queen Hospital in Belmont, which is within walking distance of my home. The diagnostic process required 3 sessions, if I recall correctly, which is not always the case these days. There were cognitive tests, memory tests, word puzzles, and finally an MRI scan. In a strange way, when I heard the diagnosis, I was appalled but relieved. That's one thing I don't have to worry about anymore. My wife was relieved as well. She thought that I was not listening to her. She would ask me to do something. I would say that I would, and then I didn't do it. Within a day of my hearing diagnosis, I received a phone call from the Alzheimer's Association, inviting my wife, now designated as a care partner, and me to a series of very helpful orientation sessions about coping strategies, such as carrying a medical alert bracelet, carrying a notebook, to write down anything you might want to remember, fill out a calendar of future activities, and most important, don't multitask. That last one's a hard one for me, and I've always tried to keep 3 or 4 balls in the air at all times. My life has changed in a number of ways. I'll give you a few examples. A few years ago, I wouldn't have needed to read this talk. I would have thought about what I wanted to say a few days earlier. The night before the talk, I would have made an outline. I would have read it through before arriving here. Then I would have put the outline in my pocket and started talking. Nowadays, that's one thing. Nowadays, I have difficulty finding things because I don't necessarily put them back where they belong. I had to go through 3 or 4 desk drawers simply to find a stapler to put this talk together. I have difficulty making decisions because I can't remember the logical sequence that leads to the conclusion. I always have a haunting feeling that I've forgotten something important, and I can't review my train of thought to figure out what it was that I've forgotten. For many years, we owned a cabin in the White Mountains in New Hampshire where we went hiking with our kids in the summer and cross-country skiing in the winter. We've given up both hiking and skiing because I get confused on trails that we've been touring for more than 30 years, and I don't want to get lost in the woods. In the years after we retired, my wife and I have gone traveling at least once a year. We've been to Europe a few times, as well as to Egypt, East and South Africa, China, Australia, New Zealand, and the Galapagos Islands. Since my diagnosis with Alzheimer's disease, I have not been farther from home than visiting our grandchildren for Springfield. We have plenty of time to The folks at McLean asked me if I wanted to participate in a clinical trial of a new drug. I agreed immediately. In addition to that trial, which is still in progress, I have donated a skin sample for a mitochondrial DNA study from here. So it really was, you know, a backside, as the old saying goes. All in all, I'm reasonably fortunate. My condition was diagnosed fairly early. I have access to excellent medical care, a loving caregiver, and reasonable financial resources. We're learning to cope with the disease. But I'm concerned about some of the people I've met who are fighting this disease without the level of support that I have. If there's anything I can do to keep this wolf away from their doors, I ought to do it.